It had been 3 days since the cold tension between him and Orm had started, and there was no sign that Orm was about to melt. Orm's ban on sleeping in the same room kept Ling lying on the couch every night. The atmosphere between them was stilted. Orm spoke casually, only words that needed to be said without any warmth. Ling rubbed his face, hoping the movement would chase away any lingering sleepiness. After taking a deep breath, she got up from the sofa, making her way to her room with careful steps. The clock on her wrist read 8 in the morning. Arriving at the door, she turned the handle slowly, peeking inside. There, she saw him, who had just come out of the bathroom, with his wet hair still loose. Ling cleared her throat, feeling awkward in front of Orm, who was now silent. I just wanted to get some clothes," she said hesitantly. Orm only responded with a brief nod, without trying to look directly at Ling. Orm's gaze was diverted elsewhere, as if Ling's presence there didn't really matter. Slowly, Ling opened his wardrobe, reaching for a pair of pants and a t-shirt that he wanted to wear. However, before actually leaving, she ventured a glance at Orm and asked in a low voice, "How long are you going to be angry with me?" Orm looked away for a moment, and in a cold tone, he asked back, "Who's angry?" Ling just sighed softly, feeling like the response was an invisible wall blocking her. No one," Ling replied clumsily, feeling even more backed into a corner. She quickly strode off to the bathroom, leaving the silence hanging between them. After a few minutes in the bathroom, Ling came out refreshed and neatly dressed. She stepped into the kitchen, hoping for a friendlier atmosphere. As it turned out, Orm was already busy arranging plates and preparing breakfast on the table. I think the fried rice looks really good," Ling said, trying to get rid of the tension with a little praise. "I can't wait to try it," she continued, sitting down on the dining chair with a brightly pursued expression. Orm still remained with his cold demeanor, only giving Ling a wordless glance. However, just sat on the chair in front of Ling and, without saying much, picked up the fried rice to serve on Ling's plate. Ling gave a small smile, though it was more bitter than cheerful. "Thank you," she murmured, quietly but sincerely, even though she knew Orm probably wouldn't respond. At least Orm's action was a glimmer of attention that she could still feel in the midst of a cold, or that she didn't know when it would end. Ling tasted each bite of her food while stealing glances at Orm sitting across from her. Unlike himself, who was trapped in silence, Orm seemed to be enjoying the morning with great joy. A faint smile was painted on Orm's face, making him look so calm and engrossed, especially when his fingers were busy typing on the phone screen. Orm was so focused on his phone, he almost didn't even notice Ling in front of him. The smile kept appearing on Orm's face, sometimes turning into a small, restrained laugh, as if something on his phone screen was so funny or fun. Ling, who had been paying attention, felt even more curious. This early in the morning, who can make him smile already? Muttered Ling to herself, while trying to hold back her growing curiosity. Ling's gaze couldn't leave Orm's, looking for small clues from Orm's facial expressions that could answer her curiosity. Ling bit her lower lip, weighing whether she should ask a question or just keep quiet. However, every time she was about to open her mouth, she hesitated and was afraid of making things worse than they were now. Ling cleared her throat softly, hoping it would catch Orm's attention even a little. However, Orm only raised an eyebrow briefly and looked at Ling, then sank back into his whirl. Ling went back to eating her food, trying to distract herself, but it was hard for her not to think about that. After the breakfast session was over, Orm quickly got up and started tidying the table, carrying the dirty dishes to the sink to be washed. Meanwhile, Ling, who had just returned from the room dressed neatly ready for work, stepped into the kitchen and stood looking at Orm, who was busy washing the dishes. Ling was silent, observing Orm's calm figure and deft movements, as if the simple work gave Orm peace of mind. The silence between them was broken when the cheerful voice of Best, Ling's personal assistant, suddenly came from the kitchen door. "Good morning," Best's cheerful greeting echoed through the room, bringing the atmosphere to life. "Good morning, Best." Orm returned the greeting with a warm smile, then refocused on his work. Best walked over, looking at Ling with his professional smile. "Today, Ling's schedule only has a few photo shoots with brands. Don't you want to come with Ling to work, Norm?" he asked kindly after explaining Ling's agenda for the day. After finishing washing the dishes, Orm took a washcloth to dry his hands, then walked over to Ling and Best. "No, Fi. I've been feeling a little off since yesterday," Orm replied softly with a faint smile. Ling immediately showed a worried expression. He moved closer, looking at Orm worriedly as he raised a hand to palpate Orm's forehead, looking for signs of heat or pain. "Are you sick?" she asked softly. However, Orm gently removed Ling's hand from his forehead, then shook his head. "I'm fine, probably just tired from the pregnancy," he replied, trying to reassure Ling. Best, who was standing nearby, watched carefully, noticing the little interaction and beginning to understand a little about their relationship. Lal smiled a little, then said, "Pregnancy does often make the body tired easily, but sometimes a short walk can make you feel more refreshed, Orm." Best patted Ling lightly on the shoulder with a smile. "As a good partner, you should spend more time with your pregnant wife," Best continued, half jokingly but thoughtfully. Ling stared at Best for a moment, as if getting an idea from those words. "Can we rearrange today's schedule, Fi? I want to take Orm out for a walk together," she said. Best nodded slowly, although she looked a little hesitant. "It's possible, but maybe the brand will consider you unprofessional if you cancel your schedule suddenly," Best replied cautiously. "It's okay, let's reschedule it to tomorrow," Ling reiterated, this time in a confident tone. However, before Best could reply, Orm immediately interrupted. "No," he said quickly. His gaze flicked to Ling with a stern expression. "Fi, it's better to keep working. Isn't it true that as a professional artist you can't cancel or rearrange your work schedule just for personal interest?" Orm said, his voice sounding soft but full of emphasis that sounded like a little sarcasm. Ling looked a little confused after Orm's words. "Duh, but..." She tried to find the right words, but it seemed difficult to find an excuse that didn't sound too pushy. Orm sighed, then spoke in a firmer voice. "Now, feeling better, get to work." Ling was silent for a moment, then nodded with a small smile on her face. "All right," she said, trying to accept Orm's decision. "I'll go to work and be back as soon as possible." Gently, he bowed his head and gave Orm a small peck on the forehead before walking away. Best and Ling walked out of the house towards the car parked in front. Silence accompanied their steps until finally Best, who had been observing the small argument between Ling and Orm, broke the silence. "Are you still fighting with Orm?" he asked cautiously, looking at Ling, who looked tired. Ling let out a long sigh, her expression downcast with burden. "Yes, I think he's still angry about the GL movie I'm going to star in," she replied softly. She paused for a moment, as if considering something heavy on her mind. Should I cancel the movie to bring Orm back to his normal self? Bess frowned, then looked at Ling with understanding. If Orm is already acting like this, then he really doesn't like it, he said in a low but firm tone. Sometimes in life, we do have to choose. There's no way we can have everything just for our own happiness without thinking about how others feel. Someone will definitely get hurt if we only think about our own desires. Ling was silent, Best's words echoing in her mind. She stared at the empty street in front of them, as if searching for answers that never came. The inner turmoil was evident on her face, and once again she could only let out a long sigh. Seeing Ling's indecision, Best tried to offer advice. "Why don't you ask Kandu for advice on this before you decide to cancel the movie? Who knows, Kandu could help you talk to Orm. At the very least, he can help explain why you want to be involved in this GL movie project," Best said, his voice soft but full of conviction. Ling nodded slowly, though doubt still lingered in her heart. "All right, I'll talk to Kandu later," she replied in a weak voice. Again, a long sigh escaped her mouth for who knows how many times this morning. Best smiled faintly and patted Ling's shoulder lightly, encouraging the friend he had come to think of as his own younger brother. "Come on, let's go now. Don't let these thoughts bother you all day," he said as he nodded his head towards the car. The two got into the car, and Best immediately started the engine. The car slowly moved away from Ling's house, taking them to a day full of work. In the car, the two were silent for a while, lost in their own thoughts. Best, who occasionally glanced at Ling in the passenger seat, knew that his friend was struggling to balance his dreams and his relationship with Orm. After a few minutes, Best broke the silence. "Ling," he called softly, making Ling turn his head. "Whatever happens, remember that your choices are a reflection of what matters most to you. If your decision comes from the heart, I'm sure Orm will eventually understand," he continued, trying to calm Ling down. Ling just nodded slowly, but underneath her strong-looking face, there was a worry that was hard to hide. Although she tried to understand that life is all about choices, she realized that this time her choices could have a huge impact on the relationship she had lovingly nurtured with Orm. After a long day of photo shoots with various brands, Ling could finally breathe a sigh of relief. She sat down on a chair, closed her eyes for a moment, and then asked Best for her phone, hoping to call Orm and hear his soothing voice. However, just as she opened her phone screen, a notification from Instagram caught her attention. Ling had indeed turned on notifications from Orm's account, and she saw a notification that Orm was live streaming. Muttered Ling, furrowing her brow in curiosity. When she started watching the live broadcast, her expression changed from curious to annoyed. Orm appeared to be in a cafe with Yang, smiling and joking. Ling felt irritated. Orm hadn't told her he was going out today, let alone just alone with Yang. She continued to watch the live stream, not caring that he was watching it from his personal account. Comments from fans came in thick and fast, many saying that Orm and Ying looked good together. Some praised how attentive Ying was to Orm, and what made Ling even more uncomfortable was when Orm read one of the comments and replied, "Peeling was busy working, so I went out with peeing." Feeling her heart grow fonder, Ling left the live broadcast and immediately tried to contact Orm. However, her calls were repeatedly rejected. Ling grew increasingly furious and began leaving comments on Orm's livestream, asking for his whereabouts. However, not a single comment from Ling received a reply. Best, Ling's voice sounded flat, reflecting her pent-up frustration. "Let's go home now." Best stared at her for a while, sensing that something was off. "Does Ling want to go home now?" he asked for confirmation. "Yes, let's go pick up Orm," Ling replied as she stood up from her chair and walked away. Best followed without much question, politely matching her pace. On the way to the cafe where Orm was, Ling continued to watch the live broadcast, hoping not to miss anything. Luckily, one of the viewers mentioned the name of the cafe, and Ling immediately asked Best to speed up the car so as not to be late to meet Orm. When the car finally stopped in front of the cafe, Ling quickly got out and saw Orm coming out of the cafe with Yang, who was still smiling mischievously beside him. Peeling, Orm looked a little surprised to see Ling, who suddenly appeared in front of him. "Sawadika, Ling," Ying greeted Ling with a smile, her tone slightly mischievous. However, Ling ignored Ying's greeting, her gaze fixed straight on Orm. "Why are you only meeting together?" she asked with a cold tone that could not be hidden. Orm looked confused, but Ying, who was beside him, soon spoke up. "Orm said he was bored, so we decided to meet. I haven't seen my sister in a long time." Ying smiled as she pinched Orm's cheek. The gesture made Ling even more uncomfortable. He quickly pulled his hand away, Ying's hand away from Orm's face. "Can you please not touch my wife? Use some of your ethics," Ling said with a sharp look. "Oh, so you're jealous just because I touched her a little?" Ying responded casually. "Can you imagine how Orm feels when you touch another woman? Moreover, touching the female lead who will be your co-star in the movie." Ying's words echoed in Ling's mind, and she couldn't reply, falling silent for a moment. "You know, I already have Priking, and Orm already has you. So what are you afraid of from our closeness?" Ying continued, questioning Ling's jealousy. Suddenly, someone's voice called out from behind, making Ling turn her head. "Oh, Sawadika." Peeling, View, Priking, and Milk approached them. Ling returned their greetings politely even though her heart was burning. Ying spoke again. "We're not just going together, Ling. I can't possibly go with just one person's wife," she said in a calm tone. Orm, sensing that the atmosphere was getting tense, immediately pulled Ling's hand, trying to defuse the situation. "Then, I'll go home first. Thanks for keeping me company today," he said to Ying and his friends. Ta turned to Ling and took her hand. "Ling, let's go home." Ling nodded and followed Orm to the car. Although Orm had to pull her a little, Ling finally complied and they both got into the car, leaving Best to drive the other car. During the ride home, the two were silent, lost in their own thoughts. Ling stared straight ahead, but finally he opened the conversation. "Why didn't you tell me you were going out?" she asked quietly, trying to contain her emotions. Orm stared out the window, avoiding Ling's gaze. "Why would I tell you? Fai herself also made the decision to play in the GL movie without telling me," he replied curtly, his tone cold. Ling sighed heavily, guilt crossing her mind. The topic came up again, the one that started the Cold War between the two of them. Silence fell again, until Ling finally said, "I'll cancel the contract to play in that GL movie." Orm looked over, slightly surprised. "Why? Didn't I say that I'd allow it because it was Fi's wish?" he retorted. Ling paused, recalling Ying's words. What Ying said was right, she muttered softly. "Just seeing you with Ying, who already has a partner, makes me jealous. What if I were in your shoes? Seeing you with another woman every day, even if it's just for work, I would feel even more jealous." Orm didn't respond, but there was a hint of tenderness in his eyes. Ling continued, "Working as the love team in a GL movie, I definitely have to be intimate in front of the screen for a long time, and I don't think I'm up to it." Ling sighed softly, letting the atmosphere between them calm down after the serious conversation. She still held Orm's hand gently, showing the sincerity of every word she said. This decision was not an easy one for her, but for the sake of Orm's peace of mind and the continuity of their relationship, she was willing to step back from the great opportunity at hand. But isn't becoming a GL actress what Peeling wants to expand her career? Orm asked, his voice soft but his tone exuding concern. His clear eyes looked at Ling, as if trying to read deeper into her heart. Ling slowed down the car and looked at Orm attentively, momentarily ignoring the road ahead. "It's true, but I'm fine with sacrificing that wish. It's better to lose this opportunity than to lose you in the future," Ling said with sincerity. Orm, sensing that the atmosphere was getting tense, immediately pulled Ling's hand, trying to defuse the situation. "Then I'll go home first. Thanks for keeping me company today," he said to Ying and his friends. Da turned to Ling and took her hand. "Ling, let's go home." Ling nodded and followed Orm to the car. Although Orm had to pull her a little, Ling finally complied and they both got into the car, leaving Bess to drive the other car. During the ride home, the two were silent, lost in their own thoughts. Ling stared straight ahead, but finally he opened the conversation. "Why didn't you tell me you were going out?" she asked quietly, trying to contain her emotions. Orm stared out the window, avoiding Ling's gaze. "Why would I tell you? Fi herself also made the decision to play in the GL movie without telling me," he replied curtly, his tone cold. Ling sighed heavily, guilt crossing her mind. The topic came up again, the one that started the Cold War between the two of them. Silence fell again, until Ling finally said, "I'll cancel the contract to play in the GL movie." Orm looked over, slightly surprised. "Why? Didn't I say that I'd allow it because it was Fi's wish?" he retorted. Ling paused, recalling Ying's words. What Ying said was right, she muttered softly. "Just seeing you with Ying, who already has a partner, makes me jealous. What if I were in your shoes? Seeing you with another woman every day, even if it's just for work, I would feel even more jealous." Orm didn't respond, but there was a hint of tenderness in his eyes. Ling continued, "Working as the love team in a GL movie, I definitely have to be intimate in front of the screen for a long time, and I don't think I'm up to it." Ling sighed softly, letting the atmosphere between them calm down after the serious conversation. She still held Orm's hand gently, showing the sincerity of every word she said. This decision was not an easy one for her, but for the sake of Orm's peace of mind and the continuity of their relationship, she was willing to step back from the great opportunity at hand. But isn't becoming a GL actress what Peeling wants to expand her career? Orm asked, his voice soft but his tone exuding concern. His clear eyes looked at Ling, as if trying to read deeper into her heart. Ling slowed down the car and looked at Orm attentively, momentarily ignoring the road ahead. It's true, but I'm fine with sacrificing that wish. It's better to lose this opportunity than to lose you in the future, Ling said with sincerity. In a low voice, Orm tried to wake Ling up. He knew it was a hassle, but the hunger he felt was too distracting. Peeling, honey, he called softly, trying not to be too loud but clear enough for Ling to hear him. Ling squirmed softly, opened her eyes which were still heavy, and turned to Orm. Her eyes looked confused for a moment, trying to understand what had made Orm wake her up in the middle of the night. What's wrong, dear? He asked in a hoarse voice, typical of someone who had just woken up. Orm bit his lip, a little hesitant but smiling apologetically. Sorry, Peeling. I just really want to eat seafood tom yum right now, he said softly, his voice sounding hopeful. Ling blinked her eyes, trying to digest the request. She looked up at Orm, who looked at her with a pleading face. Orm's eyes seemed to shine with genuine desire. Ling chuckled, then sat up as she rubbed her face to get rid of the sleepiness. Tom yum seafood, huh? In the middle of the night? She teased, knowing full well that this was no ordinary craving. Orm's pregnancy often made him crave certain foods at unexpected times. Orm nodded slowly, looking at Ling with an expectant gaze. Yeah, I saw it on TikTok. I'm sorry to be a bother, but I really want to eat that right now, he said in a pleading tone, his voice sounding sweet but unable to hide his strong desire. Ling smiled, then took Orm's hand and rubbed it gently. Alright, then I'll find it for you. Anything for you and our little baby, she said as she got out of bed, put on a warm jacket, and grabbed the car keys. Orm smiled widely, his face radiating happiness and gratitude. Thank you, Peeling. I promise that after eating, I won't bother you anymore. Ling nodded and smiled. I'll go first, she said, and walked out of the room, determined to fulfill that small but meaningful request. Outside, the cold night air greeted her, but the desire to see Orm smiling happily made her feel warm. She drove the car, driving around looking for a shop that was still open to serve the seafood tom yum that Orm wanted. After some time, Ling finally found a small shop that was still open and serving seafood tom yum. She quickly ordered, making sure that the dish was just as Orm had hoped, with a hot soup rich in spices and mouth-watering spicy herbs. Ling returned home satisfied, carrying the food Orm wanted. Ling strode briskly into the kitchen, her enthusiasm radiating as she poured the hot tom yum into a bowl. The fresh aroma of the sour and spicy soup seemed to refresh the quiet night. Ling breathed in the aroma for a moment, imagining how happy Orm would be when he enjoyed this meal. She then carried the bowl of tom yum carefully to the room, eager to make Orm smile. Arriving at the room, Ling opened the door slowly. Honey, I'm all ready. Her words were interrupted by the sight of Orm, who was now fast asleep on the bed. Orm's cell phone was still on, showing the video he had been watching before falling asleep. Ling smiled softly, feeling affection and emotion for Orm, who looked so peaceful in his sleep. They say they're hungry, but they're sleeping, Ling murmured, still smiling. Pregnant women's moods do change like this. Huh, she continued, laughing softly. Slowly, Ling placed the bowl of tom yum on the bedside table, trying not to make any disturbing noise. She then took the cell phone from Orm's hand very carefully. Afraid of waking his wife, after turning off the screen, she placed it on the table. Ling then smoothed the blanket covering Orm's body, making sure his wife was warm in the middle of the night. She gently stroked Orm's hair, watching his face, which looked calm and peaceful. After making sure Orm was comfortable, Ling left the room. Carrying the bowl of tom yum to the dining room, she sat down with a smile, enjoying the tom yum she had originally made for Orm, although it was a little different from what she had planned. There was a sense of happiness in her heart for being able to pay attention and fulfill Orm's wishes, even though she was the only one enjoying the dish in the end.